I want to get to Dr. Haight because we have a couple really cool interviews coming up here. So Dr. Haight, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I gave you a little bit of a shout out when I was out with the calves, but why don't you, in your own words, introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Marissa Hake, and I am a veterinarian. I'm a Michigan girl, grew up right down the road from Annie in Middleville, and I went to Michigan State for vet school. Go Green! Do we have any Spartan fans on the line today? I'm sure a couple. And so I actually, when I graduated, I specialized in calf work, so calf health and well-being, and so that's kind of the space that I've been operating in about the last 5 years. I'm married to a wonderful husband, Travis, and I have a son, McCoy, and we live, farm, and worship in Northwest Ohio right now.
Cool. Well, that is pretty neat. I just think it's really cool to know that you were kind of the local girl, and now you're kind of moved away and just really successful, and I'm really excited for you. So you have this Dr. Hake calf vet. Tell us why you started a social media page and kind of what you've learned.
Yeah, so when I was working in the calf space, we did some promotion and we had bloggers come to our farms, and they went back out to kind of their platforms and talked about what they had seen. And then their followers had lots of questions about how we raise calves, why we do certain things. And instead of commenting, I guess, from my own personal page, I made a vet account so I could answer those questions for our consumers. And it's kind of just, that's how it started. And it's continued to grow and be a platform to educate consumers and talk about some of these hard issues and things like that.
Yeah, so talking about hard issues, do you have a question that you would say is like the most asked question, amongst your followers?
Yeah, I think from farmers, it's how do I keep my calves healthy? Because calves are the next generation of our farms, and we really want to do right by them. But calf health is tricky, just like kid health and baby health is tricky, right? We're all concerned about our young kids getting COVID right now because their immune systems just can't handle it. And the same thing goes with our calves. So that's one of the biggest questions is what can we do? What can we do better? And how do we keep our animals healthy?
Yeah. Okay. So I was showing a little tutorial a minute ago about some of the things that we had done or tried, successes and failures in our calf department. And I was kind of being brutally honest and talking about how I don't really like the way that our facility looks. It just doesn't seem like inviting. When you think about a little baby, they're in all these like soft, cute, cuddly, and these hutches, I just think like, I like those barns. They just seem so clean and bright and white. And, but yeah, why do you think it's just, you can get such different results in different facilities, or what? I guess just talk a little bit about what I'm experiencing and what you've experienced.
Yeah, so calf housing is tricky, right? So we just talked about how they don't have a very good immune system, and so we need to make sure that they're protected from diseases when they're younger. But there's always pluses and minuses. So, on a perfectly beautiful, nice day, we want our calves outside. When it's raining and snowing and -10 in Michigan, we want them inside where it's warm. And so we try to find the balance between all of that. And what you just showed with your hutches kind of balances both of those. They have their own little house. They can stay warm. They can get out of the sun, but they're still outside. And then barns indoors work too. It's really just a balance of what works for your farm, your environment. There's no one great way. And I can say this is one area of veterinary medicine that we're always focusing on is what can we do for our calves housing to make it better. And so I really see that changing in the next 5 or 10 years to better fit for our calves.
Yeah, it seems like it has changed even in the last 5 and 10 years. So I can't wait to see what is next. You talked a little bit about the winter. This winter in Michigan wasn't so bad, but what we've seen is the spring has been kind of really rainy, and especially the last 2 or 3 years, we've had just terrible wet. Can you talk about weather and some of the things that you recommend to your clients? on how to manage those changes or fluctuations in weather for the calves?
Yes, that's a big one. So keeping our calves dry, well bedded is going to be, at the end of the day, doesn't matter if they're inside or outside. Ventilation, which we talk about a lot, is critical. So indoors, making sure you get enough ventilation on those calves. Outdoors, that they don't get drafted by big cold winds. So there's always a balance, but the best thing that we can do at the end of the day is keep our calves dry and keep our calves warm. And if we can, and also keep them well fed, if they have good enough nutrition. Calves are hardy, right? They're made to be born outside. So we have to remember that they're not humans and that they are tougher than us. And so as long as we balance those three things, they usually do really well.
You kind of talk about like, me perceiving something like, oh, I don't feel like that is the best thing. I have, for the first time in my life, I have a dog that lives mostly inside. And for all of my other dogs, like those dogs were fine outside, but now I'm like, oh, he must be cold. Like all of a sudden, 40 years of living, like I always had my dogs outside, never once worried, that they were outside and cold, but now suddenly, this dog has to be inside at all times, because he's hot or he's cold. And like, talk a little bit about that, like how we kind of put our thinking impacts the way that we care for an animal when it might not really be. Yeah, I don't know, you talk about that.
No, it's very easy to project our human feelings and emotions and wants and needs onto animals, right? And so that becomes tricky when we're talking to consumers about why we do things for our animals, and they don't, of course, they're not going to understand the science and the reasoning behind that, right? Because at the end of the day, farmers and vets and nutritionists are the experts, but all they know is themselves, and so they're going to project their personification on that animal, and it's totally understandable. And so when we're making decisions for our animals, for our farms, we're listening to what our consumers are saying. They're concerned about what's happening with the calves, how they're being housed, but we're also balancing that with what's best for the animal and not just feelings. And every single day as a farmer, we're playing that balance. And at the end of the day, it's got to be what's best for the animal to win out.
Yeah. So kind of doesn't matter what I think about the look of the hutch or whatever. It has to be, kind of data tells us.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've used data, or like, like maybe a project that you've worked on that has been kind of like a turning point for you, or something just kind of surprising maybe that you learned in some of your, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that the calf housing thing is a big one. There's so many different options out there. There's indoor housing with groups, there's outdoor and individual pens. And we're trying to balance which one's best for the calves, and not just health-wise, but also now we're looking at socialization. So these calves actually interacting with each other. And some of the new data coming out around that is showing that we don't have to have them in big groups of calves, which is often an issue with disease risk, just because there's so many calves in there. But pair housing, so just two calves, we can take a hutch and put two together. And sometimes that works to actually increase socialization. It actually increases average daily gain, and then we don't have the issue with disease transfer. So that's some of the new stuff that's coming out around calf housing.
Okay, so like when you hear, it's just kind of funny how we're going through this time when everybody is ultra hyper sensitive to like infection control and stuff like that, and disease control. It's kind of weird, like you talking about the calves sounds an awful like a lot like what we've been experiencing in our daily lives and our social life, right?
Absolutely. So I think this is finally the time, as like a calf vet, that I can come out and say, you guys understand social distancing, and that is what we do for our calves. It's hard to understand because humans, when they're in utero, they have antibodies from their mom, and so they're born with quite a bit of antibodies. Cattle are different, and our calves are born with basically no immune systems. And so this concept of social distancing until they're healthy and what I consider nursery, And then once they're healthy, they can go to kindergarten. And that's what we call kind of our group housing once they get out of the hutches. They're healthy enough, they're ready to go. And that concept, it makes a lot more sense now that we're all having to practice.
Okay. Very interesting, isn't it? It is unprecedented times, like we said. So, did you have plans to celebrate World Milk Day, or is the biggest thing that you're going to do? What are you going to do?
I'm going to work for cattle because it's World Milk Day. I've been trying to celebrate. Yeah, I've been trying to eat a little bit healthier. And so I'm working on my nutrition this month. And so I'm using dairy as part of my plan to have a healthy lifestyle. So I've been using some milk protein shakes that have been really great and low calorie. And so that's kind of how I plan on spending World Milk Day. Okay, very cool. Yeah, it's really funny. I was talking to our nutritionist and I was saying, like, we focus so much, like we have this team of experts that focus on the cow nutrition and then how little focus we have on our own nutrition, right? Exactly. So yeah. So I just think it's pretty cool to hear you talk about, you kind of having that focus and adding dairy into your plan. So Dairy Discovery is celebrating World Milk Day. Why do you think programs like Dairy Discovery or even like social media platforms like what you've been creating, why do you think it's important, and what would be your message to consumers about World Milk Day? Yeah, I think it's so important just because there's so much information out there, and consumers are confused about nutrition and dairy. And so World Milk Day is just a great day and promotion to talk to consumers about the value of milk and the nutrition it provides. At the end of the day, we live in a country where we have access to nutrition, great nutrition and alternatives all day long. And we can't say the same for other countries or other people with different, socioeconomic backgrounds. And dairy has a role to play for those in providing good nutrition. And so that's kind of why I think it's important to get it out there, because it can make a difference in the world. And, we believe that dairy can provide for not just the US, but beyond. Okay, cool. I couldn't help it. I have one more question. So you go on a lot of farms. Would you say, or what would you say is like the most common thing that you've noticed among all the different farms that you work with? Like what's one thing that just stands out, that no matter what state you're in or what kind of farm you're on, like what's kind of like they're so diverse, I can imagine, like size and what we do and everything, but what would you kind of say that? I think it's kind of the reason that I became a veterinarian. I love animals, obviously, and that's what I wanted to go into, but what's kept me here is the farmers. It's so amazing how passionate our farmers are, how they want to solve problems. They, like I said, they believe in better, they want to push the envelope. And so working with people every day who are progressive and have all of these different backgrounds to solve the problem from, all these different ways is really exciting. So I would say that's what, consensus is, farmers are just so passionate and they care about their animals and they care about their communities. And that's why I'm staying in this industry. Okay, we are so happy to hear that. You better stay for a while. We need you to keep on keeping on and making sure that these calves get taken care of for us. So thank you so much. Happy World Milk Day. And you guys coming right up. I've already got her on. Do you want to say hi to Carrie? Carrie, can you show us your video? I think there you are.
Hey, I was just hanging out in the corner in the quiet.
Look at all this girl power here. This is so fun. I mean,
it is fun.
This is like a dream come true. Somebody earlier said like World Milk Day is like the Super Bowl for the dairy industry. And yeah, I've got like the MVP and quarterback over here. So I am just loving this, you guys. Thank you so much, Marissa. And I know you have another call, so you've got work to do. Great. Thank you. Have fun. Okay, Carrie, we'll see you. We need to have a video soon together. See ya.
Great job. Bye-bye. I'm going to move my camera here a little bit so everyone can see my unfinished walls in my house.
Oh, yeah. Cut to the unfinished walls. That's what we planned on.
Yeah, it's just been like 8 years that they've been that way. No big deal. When you're farming, life isn't always, how you want it.
We are we're trying desperately to finish our basement. We started it 16 years ago.
Sounds like we're on the same plane for remodeling, but when the cows come first, you just deal.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for joining me for World Milk Day. We are so excited to come to our people online, even though we can't bring people out to the farm and show them hands-on experiences of how a modern farm works. We are in the farm to them. So we want to show just kind of what happens every day on a different platform than, if you can't come to our farm, we'll bring the farm to you. So,
and I planned on doing this from our farm, but our internet is not great up at the farm, and we live a couple miles away. So I was going to go out and have the heifers in the background that we have here, but it's raining now. So I guess you get my living room.
Raining on World Milk Day. That's not good.
It happens.
Yeah, I'm hoping our internet connection is really good here, because I've been looking forward to hanging out with you for 15 minutes for weeks. So, well, that's not true, because I don't even know we were doing this a little bit ago. Very last minute.
For as long as you've been planning this.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell me a little bit about your farm and what you do?
Sure. So I'm from Wisconsin. I tell people that I am the stereotypical Wisconsinite because I wear cheese on my head and I milk cows. So we have a dairy farm that is right in between Madison and Milwaukee. It's my husband and I and his parents, and then our 2 little boys. And we milk 100 cows and have about 250 acres of crops. So multi-generational dairy farm. And that's fun always, and exciting to have to work so closely with your family, right?
Yeah, family business. And this morning I saw you getting attacked by 2 little humans jumping on you, and they were talking about wrestling, and I was like, yes.
Yes. So my oldest son will be 5 in August, and then my little guy just turned 2.
They're adorable.
They are adorable.
We're going to be, I can interview them in a few years, I think.
Yeah, probably. Silas is really good at telling everybody that we're dairy farmers, whether it's appropriate timing or good time or not. I don't know. That's what he does.
He's very proud, just like you. Tell a little bit about what you do on social media.
So online, I have a blog and social media pages that go along with it called Dairy Carry. So I've been blogging for about, I think it's 10 years this year, or maybe it's 11 years. Math is hard. I've been doing it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I use my platforms to just kind of share the story of dairy, talk about hot topics, talk about recipes, talk about my life. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. You have been pretty successful. What do you think has made you successful? Was there like a defining moment for you, or has it just been like constant growth, or has it been like peaks and valleys? Tell us a little bit about what you've experienced over these last 10 years.
It's been peaks and valleys for me. I've morphed a lot from when I first started. When I first started, I was doing a really good job of sharing with other farmers, but not necessarily doing as good of a job with talking to people from, the middle that aren't on farms. And I didn't grow up on a farm. So, when I'm translating farm to regular people talk, I think that's what really kind of helped catch on is that I wasn't as practiced or as used to seeing all the things that maybe farm people who have grown up on farmers their entire lives have grown up on farms. I can talk, I really can. So basically, I think that it caught on because I could explain things in a way that most people understood, because again, I was that person in the grocery store who was confused too. And for me, it's kind of ebbed and flowed with everything that's gone on in my life, right? I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. We had a farm accident in there as well. My 2-year-old at one point, when he was born, had health issues. And so there's been times where I've stepped away and just kind of let things coast. And then there's been times where I've come back. And I think for anyone who's listening who wants to share the story of agriculture as well, it's really important to realize that, life is first and everything else is second. So, but I'm really glad to be able to share, what we do and talk to people and learn from people and have those conversations, just like you do at Dairy Discovery.
Yeah. So one thing, you kind of talked about how you came in from outside of the dairy industry. And one thing I really admire about you is you just kind of like push the envelope and not afraid to like enter in when, nobody else is, there's kind of like a narrative, and then you're just like, nope. So I really like, you talked about like, you'll talk about hot topics. And one hot topic, we were talking about your little boys, and I said, moms, it just seems like if we were going to hit hot topics, like let's list them out. I feel like hormones would be like really close to the top. I didn't have anybody to talk about hormones in food. And I just think you do such a good job at kind of like breaking that down and putting it into like simple terms. I think you've answered this question quite a bit. So yeah, I'm gonna just let you roll with it.
And I'm happy to talk about it. So, before I became a mom myself, I knew that a lot of people were concerned about hormones in milk, but I didn't really understand it. So after I had my boys, and I will say my oldest son had a milk protein intolerance when he was little. Thankfully he's grown out of, so he was on soy formula for a while because I had production problems and blah, blah, blah. So I had to kind of look at it from multiple angles of, what is best for my son versus, what my pride tells me to do. But, and so I got involved in a lot of groups on Facebook for moms that were just trying to figure out the best way to feed their kids and had questions. And I realized how much misinformation there was about hormones in milk and what people were truly talking about with it. So in listening to the concerns, what I think my easiest way to explain back to people who are like, I have heard about hormones in milk, I don't like it, is that basically, okay, there's hormones in everything we eat, right? Hormones are building blocks of life. So everything we eat has hormones, and milk does have hormones. But what most people are concerned about, and what has triggered this thought about hormones in milk being bad, is that in the dairy industry for a long time, we were allowed to use a product called Posilac, or RBST RBGH. And that's
a lot of letters.
Yes, it's a lot of letters. But what it is it was a hormone, a growth hormone that was specific to cows. And what it did is that when cows calve and their lactation goes up here, they start ramping up how much milk they produce. The BST or RBGH allowed that curve to last a little bit longer before it naturally went down. Just again, normal lactation curves. So, but people didn't like it. They didn't necessarily understand it. The science behind it says that it had no effect on humans. It couldn't possibly, it was a protein hormone. Our body would break it down. It's like a key that wouldn't fit a lock, right? But because people were upset about it, what happened is dairy companies started saying, you know what? We're going to say no more. Our dairy farmers aren't going to be allowed to use this. And so now there isn't a gallon of milk on the shelf anymore that you can pick up that doesn't have, this milk is from certified RBGH or RBST free cows. And what that means is farms that ship to fluid milk companies, any gallon of fluid milk you pick up, we have signed an affidavit saying we are not going to use it. And if we are caught using it, and they do check, we would basically lose our right to sell milk. So really big fine for doing it. And it was because this is what our consumers wanted. So it's not necessarily maybe what's the best thing for farms or cows, but it's what the consumers wanted. And it's our job as farmers to listen to what consumers want, right?
Right, yeah.
So even when we don't love it, that's part of the deal.
Okay, so do you think, I've always wondered about, like, you talked about the cow, and if you inject the cow, what happens, or what happened to the milk? Like you were saying, did it really change the composition of the milk, or what? Can you talk about that? Okay.
I can't link to it right now, but there was a study shown that looked at levels of hormones in milk, organic, regular, and then RBST, RBGH free milk, to see what the level of hormones were in those 3 types of milk. So they're not allowed to use it in organic. Obviously, regular would be allowed. RBST wouldn't, this was before it was just kind of completely pushed away. And what they saw was that because a cow's natural hormone levels fluctuate, that hormone in milk would fluctuate as well. The R in that RBST or RBGH stands for recombinant. And what that means is manufactured, basically, we've made that. But it was so similar to the natural hormone that's already there, they couldn't detect whether it was milk was produced with that or just the natural amount in it. So basically, it didn't matter, even when we were allowed to use it, that it was there, because it was all the same amount in all kinds of milk anyways, again, because of that natural peak and valley of a cow's lactation.
So you kind of explained the science to us about, okay, the science said it was safe, but we don't use it anymore. So when you say we don't use, it's not used anymore, you're saying like every single milk gallon jug in the whole United States would be RBST free?
So right now, I think less than 10% of farms in the US are still allowed to use that, because processors have said no. And okay. I don't believe there's any fluid milk that is allowed to have that. I don't want to say absolutely not, because I don't know, maybe there's a tiny little milk bottle or somewhere that allows it still, but
you're like, I can't even know that. But right. When do you think this was like a widespread practice? Like when we think people are still very like anxious about it and talking about it, but that was so like 10 years ago.
It literally was like 10 years ago. And what's funny is when you pick up a gallon of milk and you see that on the front that it's, from cows not given RBGH or RBST, if you flip it over and look on the back on the nutrition label, there's going to be in tiny print a statement from the FDA. And that FDA statement is required. If it says on the front that it came from certified milk, it has to say on the back, there's no difference found between milk that has from cows that have been given RBST and cows that have not been given RBST. So even the government's like, you want to use this as a labeling claim, that's fine, but you also have to put information out there that says, hey, that's not exactly what's up.
So can you kind of, like, for me, this seems kind of frustrating. Like, we've listened to consumers, we've changed our practices, but yet people are still talking about hormones. Like,
right?
Am I missing something here? What's going on?
Yeah, so that's our fault as dairy farmers. It really is. We didn't do a very good job talking about it, right? We wanted to just kind of keep on doing what we were doing, and the use of RBST has some positive benefits for our world. It allows us to produce more milk, more efficiency, less cows. That's better for when we're looking at environmental impact of milk. So a lot of farmers were pretty salty about not getting to use that tool anymore and having that tool taken from the toolbox, because we knew it to be safe, but consumers say no. So there was some friction there, but we haven't done a great job kind of explaining the who, the what, the why, and the where of it since that point. So we don't always get our information out there in the most effective way as farmers, right?
Mhm.
We can struggle with that. And it's a hard topic to take on. So we haven't done the best at sharing that information. And I see now, like the groups I'm in that kind of started this discussion for me, I've invited lots of other dairy farming moms to join those groups with, you know, the folks that have little kids, and they're chiming in and saying, hey, you know, did you know this? Did you know that? And people are like, really? Wow, that's crazy. So, like I said, my oldest had milk protein problems when he was little. He was on soy formula. There's a lot more hormones in soy formula than there ever is in milk, but it was what made sense for us. So we as people just kind of need to evaluate what we choose to eat and drink as we go, and it's hard to stay up on top of all that information.
I know. I think it just gets kind of overwhelming, and just I can hear what you're saying. Like, people think of hormones as like scary and kind of unknown, and I always think of it. For me, I would think of like, some people think it's like 4-letter word. You know, we just don't even want to go there. So I really appreciate you just kind of diving right in and taking the bull by the horns. I'm going to keep getting a lot more puns as the day goes on, because I think I'm just
You're so funny.
I was like, we better get moving. Oh my gosh, I said that.
Turning up the
So,
dad jokes, but
yeah, it's been a fun
jokes.
day. And it's just so cool to talk to you. Kind of, if you can talk a little bit more about, you know, we've had some people who are very vocal and outspoken, and maybe even a little bit antagonistic towards even what we're doing, maybe even right now. I'm not quite sure. I can't see any of the comments, so sorry.
I'm sure there are.
But why do you think that dairy farmers should kind of press on and go forward? Like, should I have just pulled the plug and like gotten offline? What do we do when stuff like this happens? It's hard and it's terrifying, and my stomach is like in knots, and like I don't know. I mean, I can see why a lot of people don't want to enter into these hard conversations, because I mean, sometimes people just don't want to hear what you're saying, right? And talk a little bit about that with you. We have like, we're over by 1 minute, but I just want to hear from you. Like, I need your advice, and you need to speak some wisdom into me. So.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say, right? 98% of the people out there eat dairy in some form or fashion. There's you know, vegans that don't, and there's activists within that community. It's not even every vegan that is an activist that is, you know, going to come out and spread their side of the story and their point of view. We're out here not for them. We're here for the folks that buy our products. We're here to be a resource. And, you know, it's a bummer when activists come and attack our pages. I've been subject to, I can't even tell you how many attacks on my page, but I'm not going to stop, because I'm not talking to them. What I do isn't for them. What I do is for the people who do buy our products. So I'm going to keep doing what I do. You're going to keep doing what you do, because it's important to the people that we are doing this for, right?
Okay.
And I have yet, thousands and thousands of vegan comments, I have yet to be convinced to become vegan.
Oh, so that's not how you convince somebody. Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't worked for me.
Okay. Well, Carrie, I should have blocked out another 30 minutes so I could talk to you.
It's okay.
You told me you were going to come to Michigan and visit, so I am going to hold
it got
you
canceled.
to that. Well, you can just, how about reschedule is a better word, okay?
I think I'm going to come the next summer, not this summer. It'll be the next summer. I think that's the plan right now. So.
Well, maybe I could come to Wisconsin or something. So.
That would be fantastic. We're not very far from World Dairy Expo grounds.
That's true. Okay.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us for World Milk Day. I can't wait for you guys to see what we've got in the, what time is it? 2 o'clock hour. Oh man, it's gonna be fun. So do you guys know what's on the schedule? Sorry, I forget. So many things. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's like a kid takeover. We're doing cow camp takeover, and then we're doing the fair. The Kent County Youth Fair is even coming out. Some of the kids are gonna do like showmanship demonstrations. Okay, this is
I love what you're doing, and I'll see you guys later.
Bye, Carrie. Have a great day. Happy World Milk Day.
You too. Bye-bye.